I just spent way too long with the scarf tied around my head trying to get the thumbnail for this video. Okay, so this is the video, which is the reason that I actually wanted to make this channel, because I kept ranting to everyone I know about this show, and eventually I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make a YouTube channel where I can review shows so that I can talk about this show and then other shows, but mostly this one because I was very excited to talk about this. So this show is called The Grinning Man, and it was on at Trafalgar Studios from, I didn't realise it actually started in October. I thought it opened in like November, December time. That's when I first heard about it, but it was on since the 20th of October, I believe. And it was supposed to close on the 17th of February. And then it got extended until the 14th of April. And then it must have got another extension because I saw it in its closing week in the first week of May, which is awesome. So yeah, that's the first thing I'm going to say about it, is I really struggled to get tickets for this because it was in very high demand, which is great. So I really, really loved this show. And to know that it did really well makes me very happy. Oh yeah, so the show itself was based on a book called The Man Who Laughs by Victor Hugo, I believe, which I haven't read. I think it was my sister that first told me it was based on a book. I don't know if she's got it or not, but I might have to read it at some point because I did really, really enjoy this show. I believe it's already been made into a film. This was actually a point I was going to come to later in the video, but now while I'm here. So I had a quick look at the programs while I was there. The programs. A friend of mine had a program and I had to read through it. I didn't just start rifling through the programs while they were being sold. I'm not that guy. Yeah, and it said something about the book in there, and it said that it had been made into a film in, I want to say, the 70s. I'm not 100% sure on that though. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because before I even saw this show and I first saw it being advertised, I was like, I really want this to be made into a film, and I want it to be made into a film because I want Tim Burton to direct it. Like, that is exactly, if you know nothing about this show, that is all you need to know. That's the whole vibe of it. It's just has classic Tim Burton, dark, gothic, comedy, horror, romance thing going on. That's what this show is. And I really want Tim, if you're watching this, this show is made for you. Please make this as a film. I'm 100% behind that. I would pay good money to see Tim Burton's version of this. Going back to the show, though, I can't remember. Oh, okay, I know what this is. I've already talked about that anyway. I make a little list of everything I'm going to discuss in the videos, and I can't read my own writing. Yeah, so I knew about the show from November time. And literally from the first time, I forget what I even first saw about this, if it was a trailer or a poster or something, but I saw something about the show and I was like, I have to see this. So I've been very excited about this since I first heard it was coming out, or was already out, I suppose. And my flatmates and my friends will tell you that I would not shut up for months on end about, when are we going to see The Grinning Man? Who's coming to see The Grinning Man with me? Will you come and see The Grinning Man? I want to see The Grinning Man. Why haven't we seen The Grinning Man yet? So that's all I was for like the last 5 months. I have not shut up about this show. So I finally managed to see it, as I said, in the last week that it was on. I was going to go by myself because I was like, oh my god, the show's nearly over and I haven't seen it yet. And then someone invited me, so I got to go with a group of people, so thank you for that, because that was nice. Much nicer than going alone, which I'll be honest, I would do for theatre and probably will do at some point for this channel. Yeah, so I went in the last week that it was on, which really sucks because it's one of the few shows I've come out of and been like, I would happily see this again tomorrow and not care. Like, I would pay to see this again immediately. I want to see this multiple times, and that's rare for me with shows. Usually, like, with anything, with shows, films, whatever, I want like a few year gap in between seeing it and seeing it again, or at least I want like a cast change or something. But with this show, I just wanted to go straight back in, and I was like, I want to see it now. Which is why another reason I really wanted it to be made into a film or something. So yeah, it closed not long after I saw it, the week after I saw it, as I've said about 3 times now. which sucks. I'm really disappointed by that because I was hoping it was going to tour or extend longer or move to another theatre or something. Honestly, I would be very surprised if they don't carry it on in some way just because of the amount of demand that it seemed to have. Another reason that I didn't go sooner is because there were very limited tickets, like all the cheap ones are just... So, yeah, the demand for it was fantastic. As I said, enough for it to extend, like 3 months? 2 months. It extended for 2 months. Which is nuts. Like, that's really rare for anything. So that's awesome. I'm really happy that it did that, but I want them to do more with it. I want to see it again. I want to see it as a film. I want to see it tour. I want to see it with another cast. I want to see different interpretations of this. I just want to see the show again. It's a really good show. So now I'm going to get into why it was so good. I've already been talking for 6 minutes. I haven't even mentioned anything about the show yet. I'm just so excited to talk about this show. So the first thing I want to talk about is the theatre itself. So I think I mentioned before, it was on at Trafalgar Studios, which if you don't know is like a little studio theatre literally right opposite Trafalgar Square. I think there's 2 studios in there. This one was in Studio 1, I believe. So there has to be at least 2. I have no idea what was on in the other theatre, in the other studio. But this one, yeah, it was on there. And which was kind of weird for me because I live just up the road from there. So I'd walk past it all the time and be like, I want to see that show, like constantly. So the theatre itself, and the reason I want to talk about the theatre in this regard is because they decorated it so well. Like one of the best things about this show is that it was so immersive. You just felt like you were part of this show from the get-go. Like you're through the doors and you're in the world of the show, and it was so amazing and so gorgeous. So the building itself has these big glass doors out front, and they put the mouth, which is a very important part of the Grinning Man, they put the mouth on the doors. So every time I walk past it, I was like, why haven't I seen it yet? And it just gets better once you're inside. So you get inside, and then there's all these like little narrow corridors to get like into the actual studio, because it's a very small building for what it is. Which is nice. That gave it a very, very like intimate, nice feel. Like the studio itself doesn't work like a typical London theatre where you've got like the stalls and then the circle and then the balconies and the boxes and whatever. It was literally just studio seating, which just started at the bottom and then went up, which was really nice. At first I was a bit like, whoa. But once you get past that, it's really nice. I'll come on to this point in a second, actually. I won't come back to it later. But yeah, so you go through these little corridors, and then all the walls were like, I think they were like a dark red colour, and then they had these like gothic Victorian-ish old posters on the walls. And it was so, a big part of the show is that it's set in like historic London, but not in the world as we know it. So a lot of the show was set in a place called Trafalgar Fair, which I thought was genius because we were right next to Trafalgar Square, and I loved that that there was no fourth wall with this show. That was just shattered, which was done beautifully, and again, I'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, what I loved about the whole idea with the theatre is that you go past all these posters and stuff, and you get in, and it's literally like you're at an alternative, old-fashioned Gothic fairgrounds, and it was brilliant. And then you get in, and there's all these lights and stuff hanging from the ceiling inside the actual studio, which the whole world, the way that it was set up was done beautifully, and I loved it. And then the stage. So, yeah, a little bit too excited about that, but it was really nice. So as I mentioned before, the mouth is like a really big deal. Like, it's the main part of the show. Like, that's the focus. So the whole stage was done out, like, the whole stage was inside the mouth. I'll put a picture of it because I took a picture on my phone when we first got in because I was like, whoa. So I'll put that picture up. I want to say now. I'm hoping my video editor will let me just throw that in there. So yeah, the whole thing just looked really, really gorgeous, and so the point I'm coming back to, because I got in quite late with buying the tickets and stuff, and as I said, it sold very well. So we ended up sat really like at the back, like very high up, which at first I was a bit worried about because I felt like we would miss out on stuff, or it would feel less involved, or whatever. But I would actually, I want to say recommend, but obviously it's not on anymore, but if it was still on, I would recommend sitting at the back of the theatre, because I feel like there are parts of the show that people at the very front will have not missed out on, but like a couple of my favourite parts are that the characters actually come out into the audience, which is rare for West End shows, and works very well if done, works very nicely if done well. Which is what I mean about there was effectively no fourth wall for this. Like, you were in the world of the show, and it was done beautifully, and I loved it. So there's a bit where a couple of the characters come out so they're watching a show, which I'll get back to when I talk about the plot of this show, but there's a couple of the characters that are watching a show, like, with you, and they literally come out into the audience and, like, push past people in the row to sit down and watch the show, which was really nice. And but the main thing I think you'd miss out on being in the front is at the very end of the show, two of the main I think it's two of the main characters actually like come out to the front of the stage and then into the audience. But what I really wasn't expecting is they carried on, like they just walked over people, like they used the back, I assume from what I could tell, they used the back of people's chairs to stand on to walk over the audience until they made it like, so there's like a platform that's like an extension of the stage, like maybe 3 or 4 rows back in the audience that they would come out to every now and then, but they climbed over the barrier of that and carried on going. So anyone in front of that wouldn't have seen, like, they would have got it, but for us at the back, we got like this full picture, because there's loads of stuff going on stage as well. This is like the finale number. And then the two main people are like right there. So yeah, I just really enjoyed that, and I definitely like where I was sitting, because that made that very effective for me, and it was really nice. Although I have to admit, I would have enjoyed being one of the people that got, not necessarily climbed over, but imagine being the people like right in front of them. It would be like, huh? Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I really like this show. So the show opens, in fact, before the show even opens, you come in and, like, you know when you go into a theatre and there's music playing and everyone's sitting down and it's nice? Well, it was like that. And then you suddenly notice that there's actually a guy on stage, like sat in the corner of the stage, playing the spoons, and that's the music that you're hearing. And that's when you first like become fully enveloped in this world, because it's constantly ongoing. It's the kind of like busking thing you would expect to see in like a London fair type thing. And that was really cool. And then they just disappear under the stage. There's like a little trapdoor at the corner of the stage, and occasionally characters will just appear or disappear through it. And that was really nice. I love when theatres are used effectively like that. So then there's the jester, or like the clown, who effectively narrates, well, I say effectively, who narrates the show. So he comes in and he addresses the audience directly. He breaks the fourth wall like from the off, and just comes in and starts talking to you. And there's this one bit where he, like, I think it's the opening number, and then he's like, stop singing, I hate this song, and it was just really funny. And it's done very, very well, and he was fantastic. And I did a little Google, because I was showing one of my friends the trailer for the show, and he was talking at the start of the trailer, and my friend was like, he sounds really familiar. And I was like, he does sound really familiar. So we did a little Google, and he was actually Davros in Doctor Who, which I had no idea about. So that was really cool to find out. It's a shame I found out after I watched it, though. I would have liked to have known that. Well, I don't know if I'd have liked to have known that before, because it would kind of, I don't know how much it would have affected my opinion of the character, or the actor even, but yeah, just a fun little fact for you. I thought that was really interesting. But he was brilliant. Like, he was easily one of the highlights of the show, and the show had a lot of highlights. So he goes on to like narrate, and he is the court jester for this royal family that the show kind of centers around a little bit. Like, there's two sort of main plots, and this is one of the plots. So there's this royal family with a king and then 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. But they're like adult children. And so one of the big parts, so I'd just like to clarify now, I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as much as I can with this, even though I know it's not on anymore. I don't want to spoil this story for anyone, just in case it does come back, or in case you want to read the book, or whatever. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to avoid that as much as possible. So basically one of the issues that the characters say they have is that there's no real entertainment in their world. Like, all of their entertainment is laughing at the less fortunate. And they want to find something that's entertaining, like on another level, like in a good way, if that makes sense. So the prince goes out constantly looking for things that are entertaining, and one day he stumbles upon Trafalgar Fair. Well, not stumbles upon, he goes to Trafalgar Fair and he stumbles upon this little, like, this guy that's doing a show. So he's got like a cart that's like a stage, and he's hosting a puppet show. And the prince stays and watches the puppet show, and the stage opens up on the stage, so it like I said, fourth wall gone, like we're now watching a show within a show, and yeah, and it was really good. So that opens up, and then they use puppets to tell the story of the Grinning Man, which brings me to my next point. This show had a lot of puppets in it. And it was directed by Tom Morris, who's the artistic director for the Bristol Old Vic and the associate director for the National Theatre. And he also conceived and co-directed War Horse. So the puppets can't be good. So, yeah, the puppetry was fantastic. I read in, like, a review or something before I went to see this show, or I think it was in the trailer, people were saying it was the best puppetry since War Horse. And I was like, I doubt it. I mean, I was very excited for the show, but I was like, War Horse was amazing. But then I found out it's the same guy, and I was like, okay, I'll give you that. Yeah. And it was really good. So I think there's 3 main puppets in the show. So there's a puppet of the Grinning Man as a child. There's a puppet of the girl that he lives with as a child. And then there's a wolf. And the wolf is stunning. Like, the wolf is another of the highlights of this show. So the wolf works similar to how War Horse works. So it's like a big life-size thing, and it's got a person inside of it, like moving it, and another person, I think. I don't know if it had one. I'm pretty sure it had 2 people operating it. But like, you wouldn't notice. It just looks like a wolf, and it looks really cool. And it's all like the structure, like the bone structure of it, the way that War Horse is. So you can see that it's a puppet. Like, it's in no way pretending to be a wolf. If that makes sense. You know what I mean. But that was just really, really stunning. And yeah, that was really gorgeous. And that the wolf is a character in itself. It's not part of this puppet show of the Grinning Man. So the puppet show of the Grinning Man uses the Grinning Man puppet, and I don't think it uses the girl puppet, actually. I think she comes into it later on. She doesn't come into it straight away. But that tells the story of the Grinning Man's childhood, and like what happened to him and what happened to his mother and blah, 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 and how he ended up doing this show. But what it doesn't tell is what happened to his mouth, which is what everyone wants to know. So the Grinning Man has these bandages around his mouth all the time, with like a cut out bit so he can speak, and it's all covered in blood, and you can tell he's in pain, and he's taking these painkillers constantly to survive. So this is the main point of the show. What he doesn't know is how this happened, how he got these scars, as the Joker would say. Yeah, so his main goal of the show is to find out what happened to him. So the puppet show that we're seeing is actually being created by the Grinning Man, the girl that I mentioned earlier, and their father. So he's not actually their father. He found them both when they were kids. Well, when the Grinning Man was a kid and when the girl was a baby, and adopted them and raised them as his own. Which brings me to my first. So I found 3 things that bothered me about this show, and the first thing is that. So when the Grinning Man was, I think they said he was 10 years old, he found this baby, whose mother is dead. Like, she's dead when he finds her. And he rescues the baby, and they get found by this man, and he raises them, and they both call him father, and they have a very brother-sister relationship, and they're like a family, even though none of them are related to each other. But there's a song, which I will talk about in a second when I talk about the songs. No, I'm going to talk about it now. So there's a song, a really beautiful song, probably the most beautiful song in this show, called Beauty and the Beast, which the kids sing when so this just visually was lovely, because it's the adult versions of the characters controlling the puppet children versions of the characters, playing with dolls of the characters, and they sing like the story of Beauty and the Beast, about how he's a beast and she falls in love with him anyway, and they use that to transition into the girl falling in love with the Grinning Man when they grow up, which is lovely, but also they were raised as brother and sister, and that kind of weirded me out. And it kind of weirded me out because in the royal family, the prince and the older princess are like sleeping together, and that's an issue. Like, the other princess brings it up, and she's like, "Stop having sex with your brother, what are you doing?" I think it's a direct line from the show. So that's weird, and yes, they're biologically related, so that's weird. Although I have to admit, by the end of the show, I was fully rooting for them to get together. I was like, I don't even care, like, this whole world's fucked up anyway, love each other. But the other two, who aren't related but have been literally raised as brother and sister, like, they're together and no one questions it. Like, even the dad that's raising them is like, get married, it's cute. I just found that kind of weird. I don't know, obviously the laws in this world work differently, and like, nothing in here is wrong. I just felt like that was an odd situation for them to get into, and for no one to question it at all in a show where the fourth wall was constantly being broken and everything was being questioned. Just seemed odd to me. But that's my personal opinion. That's not like a major issue with the show. It's just something I found weird. So going back to the Beauty and the Beast song and the other songs in general. So one of the things I noticed in the trailer is they say that this show has the best, I think it says the best British score in years. I don't know if I would agree with that. I think that the music is gorgeous, but there was nothing I came away going, oh my god, I love that song. Like, you know how some shows you go away and you've got like a song stuck in your head, and you want to go away and you just want to listen to it immediately and become obsessed with it, and yeah, at least I do that all the time at every show I see. With this one, there wasn't really a big song for me. There were a couple moments, and those are the ones in the trailer. There's, I don't know what the song is called, I assume it's called The Grinning Man, but there's a bit where they're like, everyone who sees him is amazed, that, and they're going on about how great like the Grinning Man is and blah blah blah, which is like the big song for the show. And there's a bit in the chorus of Beauty and the Beast. Those two bit like verses or choruses I had like stuck in my head, and I was like, oh, this is really beautiful, but there was nothing as a whole song that really struck me. It was in no way bad, like, it was beautiful. I don't know. That's my opinion. The vocals are fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong, the music is fantastic. The vocals are beautiful. The harmonies are incredible. It's a very, very well put together, like, musical. But I don't know. I don't know if I would say it's the best score in years. It's probably the best British score in years. Like, I don't know how many other musicals have come specifically from Britain in the last few years. I know most stuff obviously comes over from Broadway, so potentially. But for me, I wouldn't say that the music is the strongest aspect of this show, just because everything else about it was so great. The acting was great, the puppetry was amazing, the set was amazing, the story is beautiful. Like, the songs, I feel, are just a part of that rather than being above anything else, is the way that I would word it. Okay, I just got very scared because my camera cut off and said that I didn't have enough memory to save that video, but instead of telling me that and saving the video, it just closed everything, so I was really scared that I just lost like a half an hour of me talking, but we're good. What was I talking about? The soundtrack. So they released, like, the most news that they've released since the show closed is about the soundtrack being released soon, which I know has been really in demand because a lot of people really love the music, myself included. So that's very exciting, although it's been kind of disappointing, like not disappointing but bittersweet for me, because I followed them on all their different social media things. I followed them on all their different social media things and stuff, and every time they post something with like news or announcement, I think the show is touring or it's coming back or something's happening, and then it's just a reminder that the soundtrack is coming out, and I'm just like, bring this show back. But yeah, if you want to listen to the soundtrack, if you didn't get to see the show, or if you did get to see the show and you want to listen to it again, that's coming out soon, I think. And as I mentioned, some of it's already on SoundCloud, so go have a listen. Give them your money, let them know that they're in demand, and then they might bring the show back, and then we get to see it again. Yay! So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about, apart from I don't think I finished summing up the plot, did I? Yeah, so effectively it then goes into like a show within a show, with like the puppets, and then that turns into real people because the Grinning Man puppet is controlled by the actor who plays the Grinning Man, and the same with the little girl is controlled by the actress who plays her. And yeah, then they grow up, and then it turns into like their story. And you've got these sort of two stories running parallel, this royal family, where the prince wants the family to all come and see the show that he's seen about the Grinning Man because, oh my god, this is the best thing he's ever seen, and he's right. And the Grinning Man story of him and his sister girlfriend trying to find out what happened to him, like why he's like that. Because basically, and this isn't a spoiler, this happens right at the start of the show, his mum died, and he vowed as a kid to find out who did whatever it was to him that gave him these scars and kill them to avenge her. So that's his mission. Obviously, we then end up, like, the two stories tie in together. It turns out that the royal family is involved, and the whole thing, like, yeah, and one of the sisters, the princesses, falls in love with the Grinning Man when she goes to see the show. So she wants him to marry her, but he wants to marry the girl he's living with as his sister. And it's very complicated, but it's done very, very well. At the same time, the king passes away, so the youngest sister, the half-sister, I think, the princess, gains the crown and gets on the throne because the prince is off watching the Grinning Man and the other sister's doing something else. So it just, yeah, everything kind of gets toppled, and it's really interesting, and you're following the jester trying to explain what's going on. So without telling you the twist at the end, I will say that I predicted it. Not all of it, because there were quite a few things. So we were like, in the interval, we were all downstairs getting drinks, and everyone was talking about, oh, you know, I think that this person did it, and I think that this person did it, and I think this person might be involved with why his mouth's like that. And I was like, I think that this person's involved. I think it's pretty obvious because of this that's happened, and I was right. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, so it all kind of ties in together very nicely, and yeah, I just think it's a really nice, like, well-rounded show, and everything's really beautiful, and it's really gothic and dark, and the costumes are beautiful, and the singing is beautiful, and the puppetry is beautiful, and the stage is beautiful, and everything is perfect, and I love it. But no show is perfect, and no show is without its flaws, so I've highlighted 3 that I wanted to talk about. One I already mentioned, which was the weird incesty thing, but again, that's a personal issue, I suppose. I guess I just found that a bit odd. So the other things I found weird were... Which one do I want to talk about first? So again, I don't want to spoil anything, but both of these are to do with the twist at the end, so I'm going to try and be as vague as possible but still explain what bothered me about it, if that makes sense. So, as I mentioned, the prince goes to Trafalgar Fair, and he watches this play that tells the story of the Grinning Man's childhood, like not what happened with his mouth, but what happened afterwards that led to where he is now, and blah blah blah. So without naming any names, there is a character involved who knows that they are putting this show on, but also knows that they don't want the Grinning Man to find out what happened to him. So there's some characters that know what happened that are trying to keep it a secret, is what I'm going to say. And one of these characters knows that this show is happening, but also doesn't want the Grinning Man to find out the truth. And I found it very strange that the Grinning Man and his family could have been making a living kind of doing anything, sort of staying in the shadows, out of the limelight, not drawing attention to themselves, but instead they're putting on a play, like traveling around, and not just putting on any random fictional story they've made up, not putting on a story they've been told to put on about the Grinning Man's childhood that's like a lie to mislead him, but they're putting on the actual story that happened to him. So for one thing, the character doesn't want him to remember, and also they don't want to draw attention to what happened, to the fact that he's like the way that he is. So why then put on a whole show telling the truth about like who he is? That just seemed really odd to me. It was like you're asking for trouble doing that. It just seemed like a really weird choice. But I get that they have to do it for the story to work, so that you can have this nice like story thing, because otherwise we as an audience would be like, what the hell is going on? But it just seemed, from the writer's perspective, a really weird decision. But I don't know, that was just my thoughts on it. And the other thing I thought was weird, which I find really hard to describe very vaguely because it's very specific, but basically there is a character who makes a thing and gives it to another character, but you don't know that it's them that's done that, and at the end of the show they find out that the character that has the thing goes to the character that made it and is like, it was you that made this, yay, and everyone's all happy. But the character that made it knew that the other character had it this whole time but didn't remember that they made it, if that makes sense. So it would be like me making this video and like there's only a couple of days, I think, if that, between them making it and them seeing it again for the next time and not remembering that they made it. So it'd be like me making this video and in 2 days someone showing me this video and me going, oh, I wonder who made this, I have to find this person. Like, it just seemed really, really weird that they wouldn't know that. And from what I can tell, there's only one way I can think of that they wouldn't know that they made it. But as far as I can remember, they never did the thing that would make them forget, if that makes sense. I don't think they did, at least. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you've seen it and you know what I'm on about and you know that I'm wrong, tell me. But to me, I was sat in the audience and I was like, how did you not know that you made that thing, that you've been looking for the person who made the thing for all this time? It just seemed really odd. And that was a really, really vague way of describing it, but that was the only way I could do it without spoiling the end of the show. So that's that. So overall, this show is brilliant. I loved it. It's probably instantly become, it's definitely instantly become one of my favourite shows. I don't know if I would say it's my favourite show I've seen in the West End, although it's well up there, like it could well be. So I absolutely loved it, but it's definitely not without its flaws. But I would love to see it again. I really want it to come back, and I want it to, I feel like it could also get, still change. I feel like it's very much still adapting. So yeah, I'd love to see another version of it. Yeah, so overall, I will give The Grinning Man 4 out of 5 smiles. And that's it. That's everything I have to say on it. So thank you for watching my first actual review, and I will see you next week. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if you've seen The Grinning Man, what did you think of it, and let me know if there's any other shows that you would like me to review. See ya!